Hey everyone, welcome back to Quants Worth Following. Today we have our special guest here with me today. Her name is Renee Yao. She is the founder and CIO of Neo IV Capital Management. And I believe you guys are based in New York, correct? Um,
Yes,
awesome, awesome. So yeah, it's really great to have you, Renee. I guess my first question is just if you can introduce yourself in your own words, that would be amazing.
sure. So I was born in China, and when I was 4 or 5 years old, I went to visit my uncle. My uncle was the first generation Chinese supercomputer research team member. So when I visited him and he showed me the giant supercomputer, the size of like two big rooms, that has set up my early interest in hardcore science, like math, computer science. And later I came to the States. I went to doing PhD at Columbia. And on my third year of my study, I got a call from a recruiter asking if I'm interested in talking to one of the top hedge fund. So I asked her which fund it is, and she said it's Citadel. So back then, that was back in 2009. So if you recall, back in 2008, Citadel actually suffered significant loss during the financial crisis, which makes Ken Griffin realize how important it is to maintain a diversified portfolio. So back then, they have a high-frequency group led by Mesha, who is the founder of Tesla Technology today. And they also have a low-frequency group, which they call Global Equity, essentially a long-short PMs. So the goal is to build this mid-frequency statistical arbitrage trading strategy from scratch. So I was very lucky of me to be able to join a top quant fund and see how a strategy was built from scratch versus if I were to join a large quant shop today, say to Sigma, the Shao, I'll probably be put into a small team and only see a small piece of the picture. And later, after Citadel, I went to join Quant Millennium and start to manage my own book. And that was quite like back in 2010-ish, Quant only has like 4 or 5 PMs, and their business model is like a small version of Millennium versus today they seem to adopt like a Two Sigma type of business model. So we were called independent portfolio managers. And that was the first time when I started managing my own book. And I also hired my first team member, Li Feng Chen, who's also a fellow PhD from Columbia. And after Quant, I joined a prop trading firm called HAP and started to foresee all their equity trading business. And in 2015, Millennia, the parent company of Quant, approaches us and say, "Hey, Renee, we know why you left Quant. We know you want to have your own firm. Why wait? Why don't you let us seed you so we can build you into the next generation of Quant?" So yeah, that was a brief overview of my career path and how I set up my firm today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm curious at the earlier days of your career, do you feel like getting a PhD helped you in that path of getting started in quant trading? I'm curious how relevant academics was in terms of your career path today.
Yeah, that's a very good question. A lot of people actually have the same confusion as to if I want to be a quant trader, do I need to definitely have my PhD or not? I think it really depends. Now, the goal of having a PhD is not necessarily we're going to use what you wrote in your defense thesis into the financial market. It's more like, do you have the independent research ability to conduct independent research without someone holding your hand or pointing to the directions all the time? I think that's the most important thing. And for us, for example, we are actually one of the pioneers in doing research in artificial intelligence. We started doing research in AI in 2014. Back then, not many people knows what is machine learning, not to mention AI. Unlike today, like everybody has to claim they're using AI, even if they're just using their grandma's Google always. So we need to understand like what is the difference between say modern AI versus traditional machine learning, because machine learning has been existing for more than 70 years. There's nothing new about it. But what is the modern AI that is differentiated from that? And how could we successfully apply this modern technology into financial markets? So that has definitely required a combination of hardcore science like mathematics, computer science, operation research. And that's why when we build the team, we also tend to recruit the same like people with such background.
Amazing. I'm curious, what was it like earlier in your career? How did you get started? Were there any surprises early on as you were, getting started earlier in your career?
Of course, there's always a surprise, and it's not necessarily always on the good side either. So I guess the biggest lesson I learned is like being a PM and running a quant book and being a hedge fund manager and running a business are two completely different things. Like when I start my fund, I have this kind of natural confidence that, hey, I have good performance. So good performance should attract investors and I would naturally build my fund easily. However, later I realized fundraising is actually one of the most difficult jobs in the world. And I didn't realize that until I was like 5, 6 years into building my business. And so luckily for us, we bring on board Mr. Stephen Greenblatt, our head of BD last year. And so that's why we finally started kind of on the right track to introduce us to the investors, present our latest ideas, and see growth of the fund.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious over the years of being in this industry, how has the industry changed? Has it changed a lot? Has it changed very little? Yeah.
Ah, well, that's a tough question. I think from my perspective, there are definitely things that are changing. Like, for example, when I started, a lot of the first generation quant were still able to like make a living. The first generation quant means the Solomon brothers or early Renaissance type of approach, which means they use simple mathematical skills like mean reversion, momentum, and simple implementation methods, and like Excel spreadsheet to try to build a quant book. And that is like first generation quant. Now, the second generation quant is kind of what the big names today, like Quants, Citadel, DHL, which they realize, well, in order to maintain our competitive edge, we need to maintain a large army of human researchers. In other words, they hire 100,000 people and really try to exhaust human power to try to come up with latest ideas and latest research. Now, for us, we consider ourselves to be the third generation quant in a sense that we're not trying to compete with those big funds in terms of headcount. Like we're not trying to hire 100,000 people. In fact, what our researchers are doing is they're looking into the latest development in the AI space, and they will build the AI algo. So the algo will automatically come up with newer, fast, new ideas for us. And that's how we maintain our competitive edge. As for the years, of course, I see more and more funds tend to move towards this approach. That's why now everybody is claiming they're using AI. So that's the changing on the industry side. Now, there are parts that hasn't been changed much, like the number of female quant managers in the business. It's so hard to find female researchers and so hard to find female quant managers. Back then, when we were first Citadel by Millennium, we were the only women-owned AI machine learning hedge fund in the entire industry. And 10 years later, it seems we're still the only women-owned AI machine learning hedge fund in the industry. So it's so hard to encourage girls to do what we're doing. So that's why I really admire your work, because we really should do our best to promote women in our space.
I admire your work too, and thank you for all you've done. I agree with you there. Yesterday, I was speaking at a Women in Quant event, and it was the same speakers 10 years ago at the same quant events 10 years ago versus today. And I think and hope that that will change in the future. So maybe just curious on another note, any memorable stories or experiences over the years that pop up to you?
Yes, definitely. I think one of the biggest challenge for startup, like small firm like us, is always try to find the right talent, try to build the right team, try to build the right culture of the firm that could attract talents to join you. And so I remember when I hired my first researcher, he was also a fellow PhD from Columbia, so I know him. That was relatively easy hire. However, as we grow, there are more people from like diversified background. Like we have people coming from MIT, we have people coming from UPenn, like John Hopkins. Those are the people who doesn't know me personally, and they doesn't know much about the firm. So we need to kind of advertising why they should choose a startup firm of New Ivy versus 2 Sigma D Shaw, because all of our researchers can easily find a job in those top like large firms. And I remember this one researcher that joined us who was a lecturer at MIT himself. And before he taught at MIT, he taught at UPenn. And he's like, Renee, what are you doing that differentiates from all those big firms? And why do you think you could compete with them? And so I have to explain to him what our competitive edge is, basically what is AI, what we're doing that is differentiated from all the other big firms, and what culture difference we as a small firm can offer him compared to those large funds. I use my personal experience, of course, because I happen to work at 2 of the most competitive funds on the Wall Street. And that has successfully attracted people, because I think smart people want to work with smart people, and they want to find a platform that could help them to motivate and fully achieve jobs that can make them happy. So I think that's the most important thing, all the lessons I learned throughout the years in order to kind of stay competitive in this business.
Absolutely. One of the challenges we realize is it's about people more so than anything, and having the right people on the team makes a huge difference. I'm curious also, are you guys hiring now? And the reason why I ask is because I'm sure many of the listeners here today, viewers and listeners, are interested in that and potentially interested in applying.
Yes, absolutely. We are always hiring because we're always open ourselves to the talents that are interested or have passion with finance and application of AI in the latest technology into the financial market. So we're always hiring, and we are looking for people with both hard code skill, which means they either have a background in math, computer science, physics, so that helps them to understand the latest paper and research in the AI space. And also, it'd be even nice if they can combine a little bit of soft skill, which means they know how to communicate with people, they know how to blend in the team. It's going to be a teamwork. It's not going to be yourself close the door in a room and then just bring out a piece of pen and paper. So everything is about teamwork now. And that's the type of candidate that we're looking for. And we're always open to talent.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Curious what inspired you to start Neo Ivy Capital after working in the industry at some of the largest, most successful firms.
Well, I actually had the dream of setting up my own firm since my conversation with Citadel. The reason that is because I was inspired by Ken Griffin's story. Basically, he started his hedge fund Citadel when he was still a student at Harvard dorm, and he started with just 700 grand. And so that entrepreneurship is what I really admire. And so when I talk with them and start my first job, this has been always my dream.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing. Curious, as you're growing your business today, what are some surprises or challenges that you faced running a startup versus, being an employee at some of the largest companies in the industry?
Yeah, so I think we talked some of that. For example, the first one is running a business versus just being a PM, are 2 completely different things. Like you being a PM, you can probably be just very technical and focus on building a profitable strategy, writing codes. However, running a business, you really need to have this ability to explain to people why you have a competitive edge. So you need to be able to explain those sophisticated AI terminologies into simple language that a general investor could understand and have confidence in you. And that's a skill that I learned throughout the years, which I didn't have in the beginning. And later, as we partner with our head of BD, I realized that's a full-time job. And that's really a skill that for anyone who's running a business would need to have. So that's one part I learned. And the second part I learned is the culture, talent war. How do we attract talents to join us instead of accepting an offer from Google or DE And that goes to whether what you're doing can attract people, because smart people always want to work on something that's inspiring. And second is, does the culture fits? Whether you're offering something that makes people feel comfortable to work with you, because it's always a teamwork nowadays. So I think those are the 2 most important lessons and experience I learned throughout the way.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that as well. I remember just hiring people was a huge challenge for us too. Was there anything during the hiring process that, if a candidate asked you, hey, what makes you different from other firms? I'm curious, what are some of the things that you would normally say, or what helps to convince a candidate about joining a startup versus Citadel or some other larger firm in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing is always tell them what we're doing, right? Because everybody nowadays claims they're doing AI. And so the candidates couldn't tell like what we're doing that are different from Two Sigma or the show. So we usually start with talking a little bit history of machine learning because people always know what is machine learning. And we start with example of, say, the Deep Blue algo, which is the algo designed and released by IBM in the 1990s. And they use that to be the Russian chess champion. And that was a classic example of traditional machine learning algo versus in 2016, when Google published their AlphaGo paper, that's what we consider to be the modern AI algo. Now, the major difference between the two is for Deep Blue, chess game has finite possible solutions because it has so many well-defined rules. So as long as you have enough computing power, you can literally tell your machine to go through every possible scenario and just give you the highest winning hand. However, in real world, in financial market, we don't have that luxury because nobody knows where SP is going to end by the year end. Nobody knows where Tesla and NVIDIA is going to end by the year end. Those are open-ended questions where you cannot tell your computer to say, hey, go through every possible scenario using brute force search and just give me a highest winning hand. So that's why traditional machine learning has its limitations. And that's why the need to bring to the world of modern AI. And second is those two approaches have significant different problem-solving angles. Like, for example, the traditional machine learning algo, the information, because they're only look at historic data, so the information they're looking at is always lagging information. Versus for modern AI, it's always looking at leading indicator. And those leading indicators are always causative. Versus if you're just looking at historic lagging information, oftentimes they can be only associative. Like, for example, if I want to forecast tomorrow whether Boston is going to rain or not, and we observe it never rains, my neighbor's grass gets wet. Now, grass getting wet and rain has 100% correlation, no doubt about it. However, you cannot use grass getting wet to predict whether it's going to rain or not because it's not causative. And that's why traditional machine learning has this cancer of overfitting because they always deal with problem with like associative data, and they couldn't differentiate associative versus causative data. But for modern AI, this is one of the main topics. They only focus on causative information. And another thing I think a lot of people have this misconcept is they either hate or they love AI. Like some people are like, oh, AI is just like another schema. It's like big data 5 years ago. It's just another name. And others were like, oh, AI is so powerful. And if I have AI, the whole market is mine. Where in my experience, it's neither. Like AI is just a tool of, say, card counting. Like you will never have 100% sure of a probability to win every single card. But as long as, like, for example, when you play blackjack, as long as you have more than 52% of accuracy, more than 50% accuracy, then by law of large numbers, you always have a higher probability to win. It's a probability game. It's never going to be a one-time bet that I'm going to 100% sure I'm winning. AI is built on math, built on probability. And so that's kind of, I think, card counting and winning on math is a lot of people are curious about how powerful AI is and what is differentiated from traditional machine learning.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And after hearing that, I'm like, oh, I want to work for you. It sounds like an amazing place. And it sounds like you guys really know, not only what you're doing, where you're focused on and which areas you can differentiate, versus some of the larger firms and what they're focused on. So yeah, really thank you for explaining that. Just a couple final questions. One is, what advice would you give to the next generation of quants and also to entrepreneurs as well? Curious on, what you would say to them.
Sure. So I've always trying to persuade more girls to join our team to try to major in hardcore science even from school so they can better prepare themselves into a future like career in quant researcher. And in terms of the advice, I think it's very important to realize if you are very entrepreneur and you want to set up your own firm day one, just remember there's always humongous risk compared to if you start like with a normal job in a firm and learn from there. But if you are being persistent, keep doing the same thing and being persistent, that will finally reward.
Absolutely. I'm curious, did you face any discrimination yourself in any time in your career, whether being a woman or being a minority? Just curious if you faced anything on your end.
Um, I'm sure there are cases, but of course people are like they will not tell you directly. There are definitely chances as a woman you will need to prove yourself to be more eligible, more competitive than men. You have like if a man can achieve 100% of the goal, then as a woman you need to achieve 112 or 120% of the goal in order to be compatible with a male candidate. But that's why we need to promote more women into our space so we can make this a more fair game for the fellow women.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Renee, for being on Quants Worth Following. We'll make sure to post your socials as well below here and all of our social media as well. So thank you again for joining us, everyone. And I hope you all have a great day and look forward to staying in touch with Renee.
Thank you so much, Christina. Your story has really been inspiring. So I'd love to stay in touch with you and I'm rooting for you as well.
Thank you. Likewise, rooting for you. Take care, everyone, and have a good day.